for anybody preparing for exams is always go beyond the lab, right? Take full advantage of the lab environment that's being provided to you. Go and do the lab, understand the lab, but then poke just a little bit more.
You need a lab. Whether you're wanting to get in the tech industry or advance your career beyond that entry level job, you need to get a lab. It is the best way to prepare yourself for real world scenarios. Embracing a lab environment is really pivotal to ensuring your readiness and competence in the tech industry, setting the stage for a successful career. But building one is often easier said than done. Let's be honest, there really aren't many guides out there to tell you what you need or how to even practice. That is, until now. INE, which I feel is one of the best online e-learning platforms in the tech industry, just released Skill Dive. Skill Dive offers over 2,000 different immersive labs offering a unique hands-on experience. And today we have one of the great minds behind it all. Tracy Wallace is going to talk to us about this new and amazing platform. Welcome to the show, Tracy.
Thank you so much, Dakota. It is an opportunity for me, a great opportunity to say hey to you and to get to talk about this and to be on your podcast.
I really appreciate you taking the time. I know we've been chatting back and forth and we finally made this happen. Really quick, do you mind kind of introducing yourself to everyone and what you do with INE?
Absolutely. I'm Tracy Wallace. I am the Director of Content Development for INE. And what that means is I get to have my hand in all of the things that we do when it comes to building content. I've been in IT for getting to well over 30 years. We'll just leave it at that. And I've actually been in the training space, IT training space, actually getting towards 30 years. I love it. I love the opportunity to teach people stuff, to help them with their careers, and to get to play around with a lot of cool stuff. One of the things that I love about INE is that we're constantly evolving, and Skill Dive really comes out of that. I'm really psyched to talk about it, but I think you just said introduce myself, so I'm going to hold on that for just a second.
Well, no. Actually, I want to dive right on into Skill Dive. No pun intended. I think this is amazing because from someone who's worked in the tech industry, I've been looking for something like this for years. When I first started, I built a home lab and I got some really old Cisco gear off of eBay, and that was great. But once I set it up, I could never really turn it on. I mean, they were noisy, hot. You run up the electric bill. You know what I'm talking about. You also have to figure out what to practice on those. And if you get stuck, there's like no guide out there. And Skill Dive really solves all these problems. Let's kind of talk about how you guys made this wonderful platform.
I will, but I do have to ask you a question first. Did you have the rack inside your home, or did you just stack these things?
I did. And this was a rack I had bought off like a public auction from my local community college. And I'm not talking about a little rack. I'm talking about a 48U rack. I remember the look on my wife's face when I brought this thing home. She's like, what are you going to do with that?
I think every experienced networking person that I know has had their own rack. It's actually why I couldn't go into networking, was because I just couldn't bring myself to, install a rack in my own home. So cloud was fantastic for me. But, all kidding aside, hands-on is the best way to learn. I say that as somebody who creates a lot of instructor-led content, and the two go hand in hand, right? Instructor-led content is fantastic for answering questions you might not have even known you had, for giving you context, for giving the big picture, but you have to get your hands on something to learn it. You talk about kind of having the racks in your house, or the rack in your house with all the Cisco equipment. I used to do a lot of application development, and every time I learned a new framework, my wife got a new checkbook out of it, because I would like, this is something I know. I'd have to build something in it in order to understand the development environment and the framework. And so that's been something that's really been important to me. I've been involved in a lot of hands-on delivery, content delivery and development. And it's critical. It's critical to the learning process. And that's, when it comes down to it, that's what Skill Dive is. Skill Dive is literally thousands of hands-on labs. It's hands-on labs in cybersecurity. It's hands-on labs in networking. And we've got some cloud hands-on lab in there as well, but really tons and tons, particularly in cybersecurity, particularly in networking. And it's all about saying, look, you have this need, you have this skill, and you said dive into it. the puns never stop with the name of this product. But it's legitimate. Like you can dive in. You can go right in and you can start working on labs. I was just having a conversation with one of our product leads, and we've released a bunch of capture the flag labs into Skill Dive. And they are just absolutely driving demand because people love doing. I love to capture the flag is fun. It's a great way to
So much
learn.
fun. Yeah.
And we've got a ton of those in Skill Dive. And that's really what we want to do is say, look, we've got this space. We are known for expert training, and we will always continue to do that. Right. But now we also have this look, you want to go in and just absolutely get your hands on, go there, focus there, not even think about the conceptual stuff, the theoretical stuff. Cool. We've got you. And that's what Skill Dive is. And that's really exciting to me. Not only is it a great system, product, tool unto itself, but it's part of this larger learning environment that we've got within the INE environment. That's what really makes me excited about this.
I think one of the coolest things about this is the barrier to entry is like next to none. You know, if you build a home lab, and yeah, you're right, a home lab is a really great way to learn, but you know, you have cost, you have, you know, the space it takes up, you have
the noise that your significant other may not.
exactly someone else's configs on the used equipment that takes weeks to arrive at your door because you ordered it from some Chinese eBay website type of thing. You know what I mean? When I first got introduced to Skill Dive, it was 2 clicks and I was in a lab. Like it was all configured the exact way it needed to be for that lab, and I thought that was amazing. And like I'd really like to hear like how that all works.
You're absolutely right. And this is one of the things that is really amazing about being in a cloud world. You know, I started, we won't say where I started, but let's just say I saw the rise of virtualization, and then I saw the rise of cloud. And I personally jumped all over that. But the fact that any time of day, you're like, hey, I want to do this thing, right? And that's what, and you can go and you can do it. And there's no barriers. I love the way you put that. No barriers to entry on this. You pop into my.ine at 2 a.m. in the morning because, you know, for those of you younger than me, that's when the best things always happen, right? Ideal wise. And you say, hey, you know what? I'm going to go and I'm going to play around with BGP a little bit. I would love to have a setup with like 4 switches and some routers in between those. But man, I can't go and order those off eBay right now, or, you know, whatever fake eBay. But you know what? You can pop into our environment, you can spin it up, and you've got that, right? And we've got this fully virtualized environment. Truthfully, the admiration that I have for the teams that develop our labs, I can't say enough. Our networking guys that have been doing this for decades combined and build these amazing infrastructures. And I'm so glad you brought that up because, you know what, sometimes you go through, you may not even think about it too much, but if you're going through one of our labs and you go through a network lab and you look at the environment, the topology that's sitting there, that's set up, our guys built that, right? And they made it so that at, you know, again, I say 2 a.m., but whenever you want to do, like you said, 2 clicks and you're in, and it's easy to discover. You want to find some BGP labs, go into Skill Dive, do a search for BGP. You get a bunch of BGP labs, or go to our collection and they'll be curated for you. And you just go right in and you start working on these things. And I mentioned that, but the cybersecurity is the same thing. One of the things that's really cool is the work that our cybersecurity team does. And these are folks that have spent years and in some cases decades in cybersecurity. They know what the threats are, they know what the misconfigurations are, and they're going to start you out there, right? And you get that real world hands-on, whether it's capture the flag or it's defensive. It's really cool stuff.
No, and you know, I can attest to this. You know, when your guys' new version of the EJPT v2 came out, I went through that program, and what blew me away was INE's labs built into that program, and how I was actually like, I would watch the video, do the learning, and then immediately we get sucked into a lab and would spend like hours on it sometimes, just because I get like, oh, look at this, and I wonder if I can do it this way, and then just start evolving and cementing those skills. Obviously, I didn't do it long enough because I didn't do great on the test. I need a lab more is my problem. It's just on demand and ready to go. Another problem I've had, like, I've been at work and I'm like, I'll think of something I want to practice on. I have to wait till I get home, to touch my physical equipment if I don't leave it set up all the time. And by the time I get home, I'm tired and I don't want to do it. Where like I could just fire it up right there on my computer and go. It's so cool.
That is so absolutely cool and true. And I want to kind of hit 2 points you just made there. The first, you mentioned EJPT. Well, two sub points to that. One, that's actually what I'm going through right now as a cloud person and working with cyber. I'm like, I've got to get the EJPT at least, and then go from there. And it is robust. Like that is a robust content set, and it is, from everything I've heard, haven't taken it yet, a robust exam. But one of the things that's really cool about this is that's one of the key benefits of Skill Dive, right? So you're going through the EJPT content and you're doing the labs there, right? But maybe you want to practice a little bit more. Well, you know what? You don't necessarily, it's useful to go back and redo the same lab, but what if you went and did a lab that was related, but it wasn't the exact same lab, right? So you get that additional practice. You get to scope yourself out a little more because, look, the exam's not going to be exactly
Right.
what the labs are, as that you're going through and practicing. And I think that's really powerful. One of the other things you brought up, I think is really cool, is the accessibility of the labs. All of these labs are browser-based labs, right? Which means that as long as you can get to our site in a browser, right? And almost all places do it. I will be honest, it's not 100% guaranteed. If there are some places that have everything's blocked unless they have an allow list, but short of that, you know what? You're going to go and like you said, you're sitting there. We'll say you get off at 5 o'clock and it's 5 o'clock and you don't want to hit the traffic. You want to do a lab for half hour. You pull it up, you start it, and I will be honest with you. You'll know sometimes it takes a minute or two for a lab to start up, but then you go and look at what's in that
Yeah.
lab. It's this fully built out environment. That's a pretty cool experience because it is really lab anywhere, and that's a neat thing. Even better, honestly, than VPN based labs, which have a good place and there's value to them. But you know what? You couldn't do that from work most likely, right? Because that's something that's probably not going to be able to do.
It's going to require sometimes software being installed on the local endpoint, and a bunch of other requirements as well. Where this being all browser based, it's just click it and go. You mentioned, yeah, it's going to take a minute or so to set up sometimes, but I can tell you that's a lot less time than it's going to take me to boot those actual switches or hardware up. And one thing I think is, a point that's not talked about enough is, nowadays these cybersecurity certifications, the exams are becoming more and more, you're starting to see these practical exams like the EJPT v2, where you're actually practicing in a lab environment. It's not just multiple choice questions and fill in the blank and stuff. These certifications are actually testing you on these skills. So by actually getting to practice in a real world scenario with a lab, it's gets you even more prepared to be successful on those exams.
It's kind of interesting going beyond this. I love that with exams. I'm someone who has been taking certification exams for, again, pushing 30 years. I hate saying that, but it's okay. And that's always been the goal of certification exams, is to get away from the multiple choice. There's actually good reason for having some multiple choice, but having at least a good portion of it being hands-on. And if you're preparing for a certification and you're not doing the hands-on part of it, like you said, first of all, that may just stop you right away from being able to complete the exam in the first place. But even for the ones, and again, long time doing certification exams, even for the ones that are multiple choice, so many times I passed the exam because I went in and spun up an environment in Azure, because it's kind of where I typically work, and I was able to play around and got my hands on things and learned. And one thing, like I've said one thing a million times, but I'm gonna say it again. One thing that you want to think about, for anybody preparing for exams, is always go beyond the lab, right? Take full advantage of the lab environment that's being provided to you. Go and do the lab, understand the lab, but then poke just a little bit more, right? Poke that thing that you were like, oh, okay, the lab had me run Nmap with these settings. Well, what if I tweak those settings a little bit? Could I get something else, right? Always staying within the the rules of that lab, because certain things they don't want you going, like, the actual router you're attached to. That's not a good thing to
Exactly.
attack while you're in a lab. But other than that, it's such a cool environment because you're in an actual environment. It's virtualized, but you're running a virtualized switch or a virtualized Kali Linux box or Windows box. So you can get in there, go beyond the lab, play around, and really understand what you're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. You can't go and spin up 30 GPU instances on some of these labs. I think, that cause some issues, but it's like a sandbox environment for you to play around in and test out things that you might not even have access to that hardware yet, but you're maybe applying for a job where you will be working with those things. I mean, that's a really great use case there. But that's one way I kind of figured out Active Directory. When I first got into the tech field, I was so intimidated by Active Directory, but I was able to get access and to it and start poking around. I'm like, oh, this is actually not that scary when you first get into it. But yeah, absolutely, I agree 100%. Again, it is great that it's not just like a lot of labs are just focused on like just one topic, but you guys cover cybersecurity, networking, and cloud infrastructure, and there's different things within those three categories as well.
Absolutely. And as I said, we currently have thousands of labs. Like we open this up with thousands of labs, and one of the core definitions of Skill Dive is that it is going to continuously evolve. We have a dedicated lab team, and part of their mission every month is to deliver new labs for Skill Dive specifically. Right. But even beyond that, I was having a conversation. I'm going to name drop here with Rohit Pardesani. If there's any INE folks out there, you're going to know who he is. I was having a conversation with him today, and he's finishing up a learning path. I won't talk about what the learning path is yet, but then the next thing he's doing, as soon as he's finished with that instructor-led learning path, is he's shifting over and he's going to build a companion set of labs for Skill Dive. Right. So the cool thing is, yeah, you could go in there now and you could spend a lot of time going through the labs that are currently in Skill Dive, but it's going to evolve for as long as we have INE, right? This is a core component of what we deliver, and there's a commitment to making this a constantly evolving product, which is really very cool.
That is really epic. Now, I kind of want to dive into, like, you've decided you're going to sign up for Skill Dive, and you sign up and you get access. What do you recommend like people start doing once they like? It can be a little bit intimidating. I won't lie. When I logged in and saw there's like over 2,000 different labs I could do, I'm like, oh gosh, I don't even know what I want yet. Like, how do you tackle that?
There are a couple of ways that you can go about that. And this is also something that when you log in 2 months from now, I think it's going to even be better.
Is that a little hint there?
No, no, it sounds like it is. It wasn't. That's just general. Uh, but thank you for calling that out, because otherwise people go, 2 months, great. I have never been involved with a product launch that, and I'm not saying this has never happened anywhere, but just personal experience. I've never been involved in a product launch that had so much attention focused on the user experience, right? And there was a ton, and we're still uh, pulling back the curtain. We're still having some arguments over the best way to do some things, okay? And that's a good thing. What we've done, generally speaking, is we've taken these 2,000 some labs and we've started to organize them. And one thing that we're doing is we're doing collections, and collections are a curated set of labs. I think probably the best way, if you go in there and you're just blown away, right? Go in and it's about 3 clicks to get to where you see a searchable list of these collections and do a little searching. What's interesting to you? And I'd say you go one of two ways. What is something that you need to learn right now, whether it's attacking Active Directory or if it's OSPF? Go in there, type it in, and you're going to find a collection for that. The other option is take something you're comfortable with. Hey, go do a lab on something you're like, I know I can do this. So great, go run it, make sure you're comfortable with it. Then you're in. And the cool thing is, particularly if you find a collection, like look through what's in that collection. And the collections are anywhere from, say, about 10 labs up to our goal is around 20. Sometimes if it's a topic that's just big, it's going to go more than that. But this is curated to say, look, these are the labs that we think are the most impactful. And, in terms of the way we're going to evolve that, we're going to be monitoring lab usage. We're going to be monitoring the way that collections are used, and we're going to continuously improve the user experience for that, right? And so that's what I said. The 2 months was arbitrary. You're going to go in now. You could go in right now, go to our collections page, and take a look, do some searching, do some scrolling. We've got great descriptions for all the collections. We have great descriptions for all the labs. And so I think there's a lot of information there for you that makes it easy for you to dive in. We also, by the way, have featured collections. So, if all that's too much, hey, there's a scrolling list I'm looking at right now of about 5 different recommended collections that are brand new, plus a few more under that. We're doing everything we can do to make this easier. And I will say, if you're going through and you're like, this would be easier if we've got lots of ways you can click and feedback and give us some information, and we'll do everything we can to make it better for you, because we want this to be, we understand. You mentioned, I say, hey, great, we have thousands of labs. That can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
Right. And I've been on sites and I still go on sites where they're, and I'm not mentioning any names or else, that have thousands of these things. You can't find your way to it. That discoverability is something that has been really hard pushed with this. Please go in, play around a little bit, find the collections, find a collection you want, and then do some labs.
When I first started using online e-learning platforms, I was like a big believer in like CBT Nuggets was another, it's another big platform. And then I started seeing like how INE is just so consumer focused, like so focused on the end users, and like they truly, like, you guys truly care, and that's just like so cool. And it just completely shifted me away. Like I'm like 100%, like, you ask me what the best learning platform is, INE hands down, like no matter what.
I legitimately appreciate that and agree with it. And it's part of why I'm here. Right. And we don't get everything right. No one does, but we get an awful lot right. And the things that we don't get right, we are going to pursue with vigor to get them right.
Absolutely.
Skill Dive is all about you getting hands-on experience and getting to that hands-on experience really, really easily. You're going to be able to find what you need pretty quickly. There are lots of cool things. Lots of cool things are going to be added to it. But at its core, this is about us having all these hands-on experiences and making it as easy as possible between discoverability within the system and being able to run the lab easily and interact with the lab easily and successfully. At the end of the day, that's what Skill Dive is. And so it's a simple product with a ton of really hard work that went behind it. And that's the way products should be.
Hands-on experience is like the key winning thing to any successful career. And it's difficult. Like, like we've talked about, it is difficult sometimes, especially when you're new to the field, trying to figure out this all and get actual real world practice. It is completely difficult.
Look, the cloud has been amazing for letting you kind of build your own thing, but you still need to know, you need to know what to build. And B, if you talk to anybody who's been in cloud long enough, they're going to have the horror story of the unexpected bill, right? That
Yes.
there, I've had it. Fortunately, mine was only 3 figures, not 5 figures. Still painful for me as an individual, but the thing is, look, you're not going to get that. You're getting this virtualized, spun up environment ready to go. You click start. When you're done, you click end. Oh, and if you forget to click end, it's going to end, and you're not going to be held responsible. That's a pretty cool capability, and it would be difficult for me to justify doing labs any other way at this point.
Let's be honest, like everything that you do within Skill Dive, you can technically build on your own in a cloud environment. But man, I wouldn't even know where to start. Like, talk about like how, and then I'd be terrified the entire time I had the whole thing running of all of a sudden getting like $1,000, $3,000 bill after the fact.
I have so many budget alerts set up on my personal cloud account. That is also the other thing that is pretty amazing, is that on both networking and actually on all three, on networking, in cybersecurity, and on our cloud things too, is you are exactly like you said, you're getting a starting point. And yes, you could technically do that yourself. On the networking side, you could spin up even G, figure out how to use that, right? And then figure out how to get all of the stuff set up in it. All right, a lot of overhead there. And then actually set all that stuff up, a lot of overhead, then get to start to play with it. We're doing all that for you. It's set up, it's ready to go. You start it, you start working. It's like walking in, it's like walking in day one to a job that's already got a topology, except you don't have to worry about breaking anything, because if you break anything, great. It's just going to get wiped out and rebuilt.
If people want to sign up for Skill Dive, where do they go?
The easiest way to go for that is if you go to ine.com. And this is something that will always be pretty easy to find, but it's particularly easy to find right now. And I am literally pulling this up so I don't give anybody bad information here. You can click on pricing and plans. We've got a hero card for hands-on. We'll take you right to that, right on our front page. As you said, you can also just do pricing and plans. Design team did a lot of effort to put that hands-on there, so I had to call that out. But yeah, honestly, pricing and plans is probably the easiest way to do it. So one thing to note, this is additive, right? And so if you're going to have this, you're going to get a regular subscription, and then you're going to add Skill Dive. And the thing is, with the regular subscription, you're getting a lot of hands-on with that, but you're getting so much more hands-on with this. And yes, they actually have updated the prices and plans page to focus on Skill Dive. So very easy to get in there.
You can pick what you need and what addresses, your learning style and where you're at in your career. And I just think it's an awesome offering.
If you're coming in as an individual, you're getting right now 240 hours of lab time. That is not an arbitrary number. We actually, again, nothing in this product is arbitrary. We looked at it and said, okay, what's the average time somebody's spending on labs in our environment? And we then increased that and said, okay, we are running these and they do cost something to run. So we had to cap it somewhere, but that's a lot of time. If you think about the number of hours in a week, that's a lot of weeks spent just doing lab work.
Well, cool. Well, thank you again for taking so much time to come on and talk to us about this really cool offering that INE now has. If people want to kind of connect with you more or find out more, where can they go?
You can find me on LinkedIn. Love to connect. Love to talk to people there. I am on Twitter/X at Tracy Wallace Tech. You can also go twallace at ine.com. Very simple, very short, awesome. Tons of ways to get in touch with me. And, or hey, just flood Dakota with requests and he'll just forward everything to me. That'll be absolutely fine.
I will. Yeah. Just drop it all down in the comments and I will send it all on its way. Awesome. Well, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and until next time, keep learning.
Awesome. Hey, thanks a lot, and absolutely keep learning.